That afternoon, 15 boys took the field for practice. When the rain cleared, all that remained were scattered uniforms, as if the kids had simply vanished from the world. No screams, no cameras, no signs of a struggle. And on the dirt path behind the field, a single sneaker lay sideways in the mud, silent, as if someone had stepped out of reality without leaving a trace. It was the afternoon of September 17th, 2006. The Red River Panthers high school football team was holding their final practice before the state qualifiers, just like any other day in a small town in southern Alabama. Where football was the only dream people had left to believe in, they were black boys, ages 15 to 17, sons of factory workers, barbers, single mothers' kids, carrying the hopes of escaping poverty, escaping bias, escaping everything they'd been told they couldn't overcome. They left home in clean uniforms, backpacks slung over their shoulders, laughing, joking, calling back, "It'll be home before dinner." But as the sun went down, none of them came back. Phones rang, unanswered, doors stayed shut. Police said maybe it was just a prank, maybe they ran away. But then the first mother began to cry. The second collapsed on the school lawn. The third went searching through the woods. 3 days later, nothing had been found except for one shoe. And now, 19 years have passed. Still no leads, no answers, no trace. This isn't just a case. It's a void, a disappearance absolute, collective, without explanation. And sometimes, it's not what we see that terrifies us most. It's the silence that follows. Red River is the kind of place you can drive through in under 3 minutes if you stick to the speed limit. A small town tucked near the Alabama-Mississippi border, where even Google Maps only marks 2 points of interest, Red River High School, and an old gas station that shut down in 1999, population just over 1,800. Mostly black families living in low-slung tin roof homes. With front steps made of worn-out wood, jobs are few. Some work at the lumber mill, others pick up seasonal shifts on farms. The rest drive trucks or commute all the way to Mobile for day labor. In Red River, people don't talk about the future. They live day to day trying to fill the gas tank, pay the power bill, and keep their kids out of trouble. But every fall, there's one thing that brings the town back to life: high school football. The Red River Panthers weren't just the pride of the school, they were the pride of the community. The red dirt field behind the school only had a few splintered bleachers, but on Saturday evenings, it was always full. Adults gathered, kids ran wild, and mothers brought folding chairs, baby wipes, and Ziploc bags of cookies, cheering on the boys they hoped would grow into something bigger than what this place allowed. Not everyone dreamed of college, but a sports scholarship for many. It was the only way out of the poverty and cycles their families had been stuck in for generations. In 2006, the Panthers had the strongest lineup in 15 years. A local paper ran a short headline our year, next to a photo of team captain Terrence Lewis, hand over heart, eyes looking toward something far beyond the field, to Red River. That season wasn't just football, it was hope. Terrence Lewis was the captain of center back, tall, composed, and quiet. His coach called him the kind of leader who doesn't need to yell to be heard. His mother, Rhonda Lewis, was the town's only nurse, someone everyone knew, and many owed. She'd raised Terrence alone since he was 4, after her husband died in a sawmill accident 30 miles away. They didn't have much, but she was sure of one thing: her son would leave this town, no matter what. Terrence knew it too. Since 6th grade, he'd never missed a single practice. He played with quiet intensity, eyes always fixed on the path ahead, counting down the seconds until he could earn the scholarship that would carry him out. Malcolm was the youngest on the team, just 15, but he ran like a streak of wind, the youngest of 7 siblings. He lived in a cramped house behind the old bakery. After practice, Malcolm would often sit alone on the field, peeling the tape from his ankles, saying nothing, just watching the dim lights spill out from the locker room. Coach Rick Douglas once joked, "If we ran just the sprints, Malcolm could beat half the pro league." Jamal was the quarterback, the one who threw the ball. He was the only kid on the team whose dad still lived at home. His father had played in high school, too, and never missed a practice, always watching from the fence. Pride in his eyes. Jamal had a gift for curved spirals. His throws moved like they'd been programmed. But what really set him apart was his presence during drills. He was all focus, during breaks. He cracked jokes that made the whole team, and even the coach, laugh out loud. Dante played right back, known lovingly as the troublemaker everyone liked. He never made it to class on time, often got scolded for violating the dress code, but he was the first to help a teammate who fell. His mom worked night shifts at a diner 40 miles out, so Dante had learned to handle life on his own. Once, he said, "I don't know if I'll make it to college, but if we win state, at least I'll have something to tell my little sister one day." These were the pieces of the Panthers not perfect, not wealthy, not equipped with shiny facilities or fancy lockers, but they were boys who believed if they trained hard enough, ran fast enough, played like brothers, maybe they could leave this place behind, in Red River. Everybody knew everybody, not just by name, but by history, who taught who worked with who borrowed power from a neighbor when the lights went out for 3 days during the 2002 storm. Rhonda, Terrence's mother, wasn't just a nurse shed delivered 6 of the 15 boys on the Panthers roster. She knew their blood types, who'd broken a collarbone, who was allergic to antibiotics, who faked stomach aches to skip practice. To her, they weren't just her son's teammates. They were her boys too, every practice. A few familiar figures stood outside the fence. Mr. Clarence, a retired mechanic, came with a folding chair and a thermos. Ms. Shayna, mother of twins Marcus and Marlon, would drive over during her lunch break. Just to see them breathing, I can rest easy then. This town didn't have much to celebrate, but when the Panthers won a game, it was like the whole town lit up under those cracked old stadium lights. Folks forgot about unpaid rent, overdue bills, and layoffs at the mill. Coach Rick Douglas was the only white man who'd stayed with the team for nearly a decade. A former college athlete whose career ended with a knee injury. Outsiders used to ask him, "Why live there?" "There's no future." Rick never answered. He stayed because he felt he owed this place something, because the Panthers weren't just a team, they were his way of fixing a past he couldn't undo. He was strict, rarely smiled, but always reminded the boys before every game, you weren't born to lose, and you deserve more than what the world says you do. That afternoon, September 17, the sky was overcast, but there was no sign of rain. Rhonda was folding laundry when Terrence left the house. He turned back and said, "I'll just be a little late tonight." "Mama?" A throwaway line, but it would replay in her mind for the next 19 years. That same afternoon. Mr. Clarence brought his thermos as usual, but car trouble made him 15 minutes late by then. The field was already empty. Ms. Shauna had picked up an extra shift. She didn't make it out to the field at all, and in the exact moment, those familiar eyes, where absent 15 boys walked onto that practice field, and not one of them ever came back. Monday, September 17th, 2006 began like any other day. The sky was overcast, the air thick and humid, oppressive. Even for mid-September, some of the older folks said, there's a storm smell in the air. But in the South, that's nothing new. No one paid it much mind. At Red River High, the last class ended at 3:20 p.m. 15 boys changed quickly in the old locker room behind the field and jogged out to practice like they always did. A few parents were already there, scattered across the weathered bleachers. Among them was Mr. Ron Jamal's father, standing as always near the corner post, arms folded. He later recalled, "I saw them run out onto the field, joking around like usual. Nothing strange, not a single thing." Coach Rick Douglas arrived at 3:45. He started the practice with warm-up drills. Around 4:15, he divided the team into 3 position groups to run plays. Everything seemed normal. Then, at 4:50, Coach Rick abruptly called the team to the center of the field. He said something no one outside heard what. Team Captain Terrence nodded, then turned to say something quick to Malcolm and Dante. After that, the whole team began packing up faster than usual. By 5:05 p.m., the wind had picked up. Parents began folding chairs. A few left early. Mr. Ron said, "I figured they'd wrap it up early because of the weather. But when I got in my car and pulled away at 5:15, they were still on the field." That was the last time he saw his son. After 5:30 p.m., there were no more adults near the field when the rain began to fall lightly. No one thought much of it. It wasn't unusual for the field to be empty during a storm. People assumed the boys had taken shelter or were cutting through the school buildings to the parking lot. But at 6:20, when Rhonda texted Terrence and got no reply, something started to feel wrong. Within 2 hours, 5 parents had called the school. 2 had already driven back to the field, only to find it completely empty. No backpacks, no kids, just a few water bottles knocked over, a torn-up playbook, and a portable speaker used during warm-ups, still charged, but turned off. No one could understand how, in just over an hour, an entire football team could vanish without a sound. No shouts, no distress calls. No one saw them leave, and none of the boys had their phones. That was team policy. No phones on the field. Disconnect from the outside world. A harmless rule until silence was the only thing left. At first, it was just strange. Then it became panic as the sun set, and all 15 boys still hadn't come home. No texts, no calls, no word from friends. The mothers began calling each other. Rhonda called Malcolm's mom. She called Jamal's dad, one by one. The entire neighborhood, where every family lived within blocks, knew something was wrong, and no one had answers. The first official call to the local police came at 7:42 p.m. Officer Carla took the missing persons report. She assumed it was a mistake. 15 kids don't go missing at the same time. But when she called each parent to verify, and every single one said the same thing, "My son left for football at 4 and hasn't come back," she felt the chill creep in. Police Chief Jake Maddox, a Red River native and former student of Coach Rick, immediately ordered the football field locked down. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. These kids, they're not the type to run off, not all of them, not like this. By midnight, nearly the entire town had gathered at the field. They brought flashlights, raincoats, even family dogs. One group headed down the narrow trail behind the field, the same path the team used for endurance drills on cooler days. It led through dense brush to a swampy area locals called the Cinca, forgotten wetland, where, in 1982, a school bus accident had claimed 11 students after it flipped in a post-storm flood. Since then, no one went near that place unless they had to. At exactly 1:15 a.m., a teenage volunteer, Dante Cousins, spotted something beneath a bush about 600 meters from the field. A sneaker, nearly new, white with red trim, caked in mud on one side, no blood. When he turned it over, everyone went quiet. Written inside in white marker, T. Lewis. Police bagged the shoe and brought it to the station, but Rhonda already knew. She'd bought those shoes for Terrence 3 weeks earlier for his birthday. She remembered writing his name in them herself. Terrence had called them his lucky shoes, said he'd wear them all the way to state. That's when hope started to crack, by morning. The story had begun to spread. It started with a Facebook post from Ms. Shanna Mother, of twins Marcus and Marlon. "If anyone has seen my boys, or anyone from the Panthers, please call this number," within hours. It had been shared over 1,000 times. Local news picked it up. Reporters arrived. Headlines flashed 15 black high school athletes vanish in Alabama. But no one could answer the only question that mattered. Where did the boys go, and why didn't anyone hear a thing? Rhonda sat at the station nearly nonstop for the first 36 hours. State authorities joined the search. K-9 units, thermal drones, dive teams. They found nothing except overlapping footprints leading to the forest trail. Then nothing, as if the boys had walked into open air and disappeared. Coach Rick Douglas was called in for questioning. He arrived Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., mud on his jacket, eyes sunken. He said, calmly, "Practice ended early because of the weather. I assumed the boys headed home like always." When asked what time he left the field, he said, "Around 5:20. I drove to the repair shop. My oil light came on, but surveillance footage showed his car didn't arrive there until 6:45, 85 minutes later." A detective asked, "So where were you during that gap?" Rick paused, then said, "I went back to check the equipment shed near the woods, just to make sure no one was hiding from the rain. But when police checked the shed, the door was chained shut, a thick coat of dust. No signs of recent entry. Doubt began to grow. No one accused Rick, not officially. There was no evidence, but the mother's eyes changed when they looked at him. especially when Rhonda asked right there in front of everyone. "Did you see Terrence at the end of practice?" Rick hesitated, then said, "I don't remember exactly. I think I saw him. Or maybe Jamal. Not sure. For a man who prided himself on remembering every movement, every play not sure hit like a fracture." The next day, another piece of evidence surfaced. A ripped, waterlogged playbook belonging to Terrence was found almost a mile from the field, at the edge of the woods. On the last page, a hand-drawn formation, and beneath it, faint purple ink, scrawled hastily. Coach said, "Don't tell." No one could confirm the handwriting was Terrence's, but when Rhonda saw it, she said nothing. She just held the notebook to her chest. And the town understood. This was no longer just a disappearance. This was a mystery someone didn't want solved. 3 days after the boys vanished, the atmosphere in Red River shifted from grief to suspicion. In hastily arranged community meetings at the school auditorium, questions started emerging, not just about the missing boys, but about the adults around them. Who saw them last? Who was present? Who was absent? Who had gone where? And why was the silence so eerily complete? The first person under scrutiny was Coach Rick Douglas, though never charged. The gaps in his testimony and small inconsistencies began to fracture the trust the community once had in him. Parents who once trusted him implicitly now whispered behind his back. Dante's mother revealed her son once said, "Coach made us do a private test before the game." She thought it was a joke, but when pressed, she couldn't recall any specific details. Just said there was some run near the woods where upperclassmen trained. A younger student admitted to police that he overheard senior players talking about a final test, something Rick referred to as a mental challenge, forcing the team to lead each other out of the woods to prove they wouldn't quit. No dates were clear, but he claimed everyone talked about it, a tradition that was never recorded but whispered. Police reviewed last year's records and found an anonymous letter to the principal, claiming some players were forced to stay late after practice for extra physical drills off the field. It was unverified, no one knew who sent it, and nothing was ever acted upon. But now, in light of the tragedy, it echoed back like an ominous warning no one heeded. Meanwhile, volunteer search teams expanded into the northern forest areas, not on the usual practice route. No boys were found, but a teenager spotted an old, dilapidated camping shack used since the 1970s. Now nearly overtaken by nature, inside were faint handprints of children smeared in mud, and one wall bore a crudely carved message, "We're still here." There was no DNA, no signature, no proof these prints came from the Panthers, but when Rhonda was led there, she stood silent and long. She only whispered. Terrence used to draw that way when he was little, using his fingers like crayons, while the search yielded no more. Investigators began re-interviewing everyone seen at the field that afternoon. One overlooked person turned out to be Felix Bowman, the school's maintenance worker, responsible for locking the back gate and checking lights after practice. Felix stated that he arrived around 5:30 p.m. to fix a flickering light, but found the field empty, not a soul in sight. "I thought practice was over. I even saw that little speaker left under the bench." Police asked, "You saw no one?" "Not even the coach's truck." Felix hesitated before replying. "I saw Rick's truck, but I couldn't say if he was in it. I didn't go near." That directly contradicted Rick Douglas' statement that he left at 5:20 p.m. Felix was right. Rick's vehicle was still there after 5:30. Then there was surveillance footage from the long-defunct gas station 2 blocks from the field, an old camera, tucked away and misaligned, but catching distant views of the road leading to the field at 5:47 p.m. that day. A gray pickup pulled into view 1, matching Rick's truck, but the tape showed no record of it leaving. The footage corrupts automatically at 6:10 p.m., just when the storm hit, as if someone had known exactly how long it took to vanish. Tension in the town grew suffocating. Those who once saw Rick as a hero now stepped aside when he passed. No charges were filed. There was no proof of wrongdoing, but he offered no alibi. Only repeated, "I don't know where the boys went. I swear." Then, a minor but chilling detail emerged from a freshman named Elijah. He told a school counselor that, about 2 weeks before the disappearance, he overheard Terrence, Jamal, and Dante whispering about a different way out through the woods, Elijah said they referred to it as if we make the finals. Coach will put us through a test along that path. He thought they were joking, but when asked again, he confirmed. They called it the Serpent's Cut. No one on the team had heard of it. No map, no official record. But then Mr. Clarence, a town elder and former scout, reacted when he heard the name Serpent's Cut. Haven't heard that name in years. It was a shortcut through the woods to the northern swamp, but it's been abandoned. Only reckless kids would go there on the 8th day after the boys disappeared. Another clue surfaced, not from police, but from a handwritten note while cleaning her twin son's room. Ms. Shanna found a note tucked deep under Marlon's pillow. It wasn't a diary. It had no date, just a few words. If we don't come back, tell Mr. Clarence we weren't afraid, but there's something in the woods, not everyone can see it. She handed it to police. No one understood the meaning clearly, but it felt unmistakably serious. Marlon was quiet and shy, so who wrote it? And why entrust it to Mr. Clarence, the only adult who survived the 1982 tragedy? At the Sink police went to question Mr. Clarence. He initially refused to speak. Hours later, he said softly, his voice distant, tremulous. I can't prove it, but if the kids heard that, crying in the woods, it wasn't the first time. People had assumed the 1982 accident was caused by driver fatigue, but rumors about the sink persisted quietly. Some claimed the swamp had a directional wind that disoriented travelers. Others spoke of unnatural sounds like voices calling, but not from people they recognized. No one ever investigated. No one wanted to dig deeper in a struggling town. Some things were better left forgotten. But now, within those simultaneous disappearances of 15 children, no one could ignore. Skeptical horror had become collective dread. Meanwhile, history teacher Megan Hayes discovered an old 1974 hand-drawn forest map among school archives. It marked a trail in red ink untitled, but labeled in scrawl serpents. Cut Shortcut, or Trap Police, organized a search party to that exact spot. They uncovered an overgrown path, deep and narrow, sludged with mud and roots, hidden under a large rock. Searchers found a small piece of red fabric similar to the knee wraps Terrence wore during sprints. The fabric was frayed, wet, but the color was unmistakable. A sign, a mark, a question, by now. The community realized this was no accident, and not necessarily a conspiracy either. It was something in between, a place where people, memories, fear, and truth tangled into a labyrinth with no clear exit. By the 3rd week after the 15 boys vanished, national media attention had dwindled, pushed aside by federal scandals, coastal hurricanes, and election coverage. But a quiet interrogation was underway 20 miles away at the county investigative office. The person under scrutiny wasn't a stranger. It was Coach Rick Douglas. There was no physical evidence, no DNA, no clear eyewitness account, no blood, no signs of violence, but a special investigative team, 2 seasoned detectives from Montgomery. Unearthed a detail in Rick's record that had been overlooked. In 1994, while he was an assistant coach at a high school in Mobile, Rick was suspended for 2 weeks for pushing students beyond physical limits. The case was handled internally, no lawsuit filed, but a parent's report noted he made the kids run a night forest drill, called it a test of grit. My son came home battered, disoriented. Rick resigned, transferred schools, and the matter disappeared. When confronted about it, Rick was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I did that, but only with the captains and never forced anyone. No one was ever in danger. When asked if he had used the same test with the Panthers, Rick avoided eye contact and replied coldly, I don't have evidence to refute it, but I didn't do what you think I did. His expression in the interrogation footage unsettled many. It wasn't defensive or fearful. It was the look of someone who had lost control and was trying to put the pieces back together. This stirred debate across the town. Some defended him. Others felt he knew more than he'd admit, and some accused him outright of leading the team astray. Trust in Rickand in the community began to fracture. Meanwhile, investigators uncovered an old email from Rick's school account to a former assistant coach. It read, the boys aren't tight enough. I need to try the walk-in test like before. Nobody knew what walk-in meant, but the phrase spread through barbershops, grocery aisles, and mothers whispered conversations like a coded message at a community meeting. Rhonda stood up for the first time in weeks. She didn't cry. She said, "I don't know if Rick did something wrong. But if my son was led down a path no one dares walk, I want to know who held the map." 4 weeks after the boys disappeared after endless, fruitless searches, a new name surfaced. It wasn't in police records or witness statements, but in a recovered draft message from Marcus' phone, a text composed at 4:38 p.m. on that fateful day Hess here. Not like last time. The message wasn't "sent no signal" in that phone dead zone behind the field, but digital forensics recovered it. Who was he, and what did last time mean? Everyone first thought of Rick. But phone location data proved Rick hadn't used his phone then. No other coach was mentioned. Until a former student, now 32-year-old Brian Holt, came forward. He said a man neither teacher nor parent often appeared at late practices, claiming to be a friend of the team. He wore old military attire, spoke little, and only showed up when storms were coming. Brian recalled, "He led us into the woods, twice, said it was for mental training. The first time we came back. The second time I got lost and didn't return until after dark. When asked the man's name, Brian only knew him as Sarge. No official records listed anyone named Sarge as a staff or volunteer, but digging deeper, detectives found a 1998 security report referencing an unknown man ejected from campus for participating in physical training without authorization. There was no photo. No "I just the note," self-identified as ex-Army coach wanting to toughen students, advised not to return. That incident faded into obscurity until Marcus' final message brought it back. The community began to wonder, was there a third person outside Rick and the players who had been among them? Unnoticed, a figure lurking on the sidelines, near the tree line, guiding shadows before vanishing. Police reviewed every practice photo posted by parents from 2005 to 2006 in one blurry image. Off to the left, near the goalpost, a figure in camo jacket stood by a tree. No face, no name. But the memory of him lingered. And at that moment, the disappearance of 15 students stopped being just a local tragedy. It had morphed into a new labyrinthine where the suspect you trust becomes suspect, and the unknown stranger who walked through every photo becomes the ghost no one spoke of. By day 33, the town of Red River had reached its breaking point. The polite meetings were over. The respectful nods to police had turned to cold stares. People started arguing, distrusting each other, and, most hauntingly, they began to doubt their own memories. Things that once seemed certain now felt blurred. Did I really hear footsteps behind the field that evening? Was that shadow closer than I thought? Did I see something and just not dare to name it? One mother recalled that. About a week before the disappearance, her son, who wasn't on the team, came home with a scratch on his arm. He'd said, "The Panthers are getting ready for some overnight challenge." When she asked who was in charge, he only said, "Coach didn't force it, but someone else was there, behind the field, at the time." She brushed it off, now. Those words returned like poison, wind blowing apart every fragile theory, holding together. The investigation began to unravel. Rick Douglas was officially suspended. The school came under internal audit. The local police were accused of incompetence. The community split into two camps, some believing in some grand outside conspiracy. The other convinced that everything had happened right here, in plain sight, and no one had the courage to speak. Then, on day 36, a forgotten notebook of Terrence Lewis surfaced in his desk drawers, supposedly checked weeks ago. Taped to the inside back cover was a folded slip of paper. On it, in his handwriting, "If I have to go, I'll lead the team. But if I don't come back, don't blame me for trusting the wrong person." Below the word "person" were 3 interlocking lines, no letters. No familiar logo, just a symbol. When Mr. Clarence saw it, he whispered, "That mark. It used to be on the old training board when I was a boy. 3 lines, 3 trials strength. Spirit and faith." Then he added, more somberly, "That test was never meant for kids." Suddenly, all previous assumptions cracked open. Maybe Rick hadn't started this. Maybe an old, forgotten tradition had been revived, twisted, misused, And perhaps Terrence knew the risk all along, but chose to step forward anyway, for something bigger than himself. No one was trustworthy anymore. Not coaches, not students, not parents or witnesses. The truth had shattered like glassy person now holding a piece, seeing part of themselves and part of something they were never ready to face. On the morning of day 38, while clearing out the school library's back storage, a retired volunteer named Sarah stumbled upon a small tin box wedged beneath a filing cabinet, dust-covered, label faded. The only legible words, Archives Coaching Staff. Inside were damaged VHS tapes, old training notes, and most disturbingly, a faded notebook, scattered entries on drills, student behavior, and a handwritten list of names from 1982 to 2006 split into 3 groups. Each name was marked with the same triple-line symbol. 14 of the 15 Panthers from 2006 were on that list. The only one missing was Malcolm. Next to his name were 2 handwritten words. Too young. No one knew what the grouping system meant. The list wasn't official. It didn't appear in any school records, and it stopped at 2006. No entries after. As if someone wrote that final list, then vanished, just like the kids in it. Red River spiraled from confusion into crisis. Parents demanded full access to school records, pushed for an independent board of inquiry. Neighbors turned on each other, accusing others of knowing but staying silent. Some families packed up and left homes shuttered, porches empty. Their only message were not coming back. Those who stayed lived with a heavy question. Did we really protect our kids the way we thought we did, at a small vigil held for the first time since the disappearance? Rhonda stepped up to the mic before a hushed crowd. Her voice was slow, steady, unwavering. She said, "I used to believe that if you love your child enough, work hard enough, and trust the right people, they'll be safe. But now I understand there are systems, unseen things, built long before we arrived, and they swallow children whole. Children who never knew they were being tested by something that should never have been called tradition, right after the vigil." A new map appeared pinned to the town bulletin board, hand-drawn, every forest path marked, every shortcut, every dead signal zone, every place a trace had once been found. At the bottom, scrawled in chalk if anyone still wants to search, "It'll go with you." No signature, but everyone knew it was from Clarence, and with that map, a new chapter began, not of a criminal case, but a journey to reclaim something lost, not just in the tangled woods of Red River, but in the hearts of those who once believed they knew the land beneath their feet. On day 45, a week after the memorial, life in Red River returned to its familiar sounds, the early morning rumble of trucks, the shuffle of slippers on front porches, the crackle of weather reports on the midday radio. But beneath that everyday rhythm was a new kind of silence, not because people stopped talking, but because no one was sure anymore what was real. The state police officially classified the case as open under investigation, which was another way of saying no real progress, no arrests, no charges, but no one was cleared. Either every glance, every word now carried a quiet weight of suspicion, and the 15 names, once cheered from the stands, now stood etched into a small stone marker behind the school rough hewn from local rock. No designs, no color, just the words Panthers were still waiting. Rhonda still lived in the same house, still worked night shifts as a nurse. But one thing had changed every evening after work. She would walk to the football field and sit on the second row, where she used to watch her son play his first games. She didn't bring flowers. She didn't light candles. She just sat, like a steady heartbeat in a world that had lost its rhythm. Some people said it was over, that the 15 boys were gone, and what was left was learning how to let go. But others, those who said little, still believed something was unfinished. They were the ones who hiked with Clarence into the woods each weekend. They were former students who came back, piecing together fragments of memory. They were mothers who left their sons' rooms untouched, as if absence hadn't yet earned permanence. And then one night, late in the second month, a little girl, the younger sister of Dante, told her mother she had dreamed of him, standing at the edge of the forest, in his uniform, smiling. When Shauna asked, "Are you sure?" the child replied. Dante said, "The road didn't end, it just turned." The adults nodded, offering quiet smiles. They didn't fully believe it, but they didn't dismiss it either, because in stories like this, sometimes what people need most isn't the truth, but a reason to keep walking forward. And so, life went on, in absence, in fragile hope, in unanswered questions no one dared answer fully. We've spent nearly an hour walking through a story no one in Red River ever wanted to remember, but none of them are allowed to forget. A story of 15 missing boys, of trust put to the test, and of things buried deep within a community that even the people living there struggled to face. You might still have questions. You might be wondering, what would I do if it were my child? Or what if my own neighborhood had hidden corners no one had ever dared shine a light into? Would I speak up as for us? Well, keep searching, not just into what happened in Red River, but into other stories where long silences should never be left unheard. What would you like to hear next? A disappearance that seemed unrelated, but shares eerie details. A family who's waited 20 years for answers that never came, or maybe another town just like Red River where grief once broke them, but they found a way to heal. Well, be here, telling, remembering, and listening.